This episode of Sovryn Tech is dedicated to Renee. Odo, we'll always have a bucket out for you.
Power on.
I've cleared the rooms above, below, and to both sides of the First Minister's quarters.
I would recommend clearing that entire section of the habitat ring.
I'm afraid that isn't feasible. There are over 1,200 people living there.
Providing security was difficult enough aboard the Enterprise. It appears to be next to impossible on this station.
It isn't easy.
I prefer a more orderly environment.
We have that in common. My people have an innate need for order.
How do you tolerate living here?
I make order where I can. For one thing, I have a daily routine which I follow unwaveringly. The shopkeepers on the promenade joke that they can set their clocks by me.
Unfortunately, I have found it difficult to establish a routine here.
There are other ways to create order in your life. Your quarters, for example. Everything in mine has its specific place and it's all arranged just so.
It's mine too. Even with my eyes closed, I would still know where everything was.
Exactly.
I would not tolerate it any other way.
I'll tell you what else to do. Make sure everyone knows they can't just drop by your quarters to say hello. If someone does, whatever happens, don't make them feel welcome.
Of course not. That would only invite subsequent visits.
Precisely.
So far, the only person that has a tendency to drop by is Chief O'Brien.
That's probably because he knows you from the Enterprise.
Perhaps if I am more inhospitable, he will stop.
Good luck.
Earth, 2019. Dominant species, human. Galactic potential rating, 0. Cultural affiliation, combination of government and global businesses, corporatism, legacy institution. Species still conservative, superstitious, and religious. Ecologically illiterate, largely unaware of cosmological foundation of love. Level of technological dependence is disturbingly higher than the galactic standard. Species distracted and behavior controlled by technology companies. System error. Advanced concepts detected beyond normal human levels. New galactic potential rating, over 9,000. Transmission type, podcast. Host, the Man of Tomorrow. Brian Sovryn. Source, Sovryn Tech.
A man like no other. You think I'm talking about me? No. Woo. Of course, it is the Golden Stallion, the Man of Tomorrow, Savzu, the rated R radio star, here for you, coming out of the Silicon Mill Yard. Of course, that's in New Hampshire. But it's almost Ice Planet Zero. Of course, people know I've often called this that, or called that this. Wait a minute. All right. Anyway. It's a balmy 50 degrees today. Can you believe that? And you telling me that New Hampshire is always a frozen wasteland? No, by no means. But something that certainly felt like a frozen wasteland. In fact, I was in the middle of a bit of a workout, and the news came across, and this is a great argument for why you shouldn't have a smartphone with you while you're working out. You know, okay, quick side note. Of course, I have a Kindle Oasis, the 9th generation. I don't have the 10th. It's fine. It wasn't that big of an upgrade. But I have the 9th generation. Now, that can play audiobooks, okay? I really wish it could do podcasts. Here's the thing. When I'm working out, I've tried this. There's times where I can, and I guess it depends on the workout. But my mind has got to, I mean, you hear about the mind-muscle connection, right? And actually, we're going to talk about health pretty hardcore here during HackSec. Believe me, it matters. Wait till you get to the story. But I got to go with music. I mean, even if it's like peaceful music, I can't really go with something that is so much engaging, me to really think about it. So I can't, audiobooks, you'd think it would be a great place, working while you're working out, because I go, generally 2 hours a night. Okay. And generally 7 nights a week. It's an hour to 2 hours. And you think, boy, that'd be a great time to get in some audiobooks and everything. I can't do it. And I can't even really do podcasts either, because I would love, to not take my smartphone. Of course, we've talked about where, you can just strip everything out of a smartphone, make it a glorified MP3 player and carry around that. I do that, but then also I will still have that stream to Plex. That's a problem, and we're going to talk about that during our opening story, because Plex has made a very interesting announcement that a Sovryn Tech listener, a great Sovryn Tech listener, actually sent into me and covered, and it gets into other things that have been going on with Plex over the past few months that we're going to talk about. And it's important to talk about because, well, all of this comes together, and you'll see why. Anyway, point being, what I was going to get at, so I really wish that, because that Kindle Oasis is practically indestructible. I really, really wish that I could just, I could rock, audiobooks, and that would be good enough for me during a workout. Maybe I have to train myself, but in doing so, to really make that work. But anyway, so I was at the gym. Ellen and I were there, and it comes across my feed. Renee Auberjonois dies at the age of 79 from cancer. Renee Auberjonois, who you heard at the top of the show, played, to me, I mean, he was in Benson, he's done a lot of things, and people recognize him from a lot of, anyway, he also did voice work. I mean, I know him from certain movies where he did voice work and TV shows. For me, Renee Auberjonois will always be Odo from Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Definitely definitely his biggest role. I think if anything he's going to get remembered for, it's that. Now, he's done other stuff in Star Trek as well. Of course, he played a colonel in Star Trek 6. It's not like he hasn't been around, but his part of Odo was tremendous. And if you saw the recent Deep Space Nine documentary that really went like wildfire in 2019. I mean, this documentary was very popular, got a theatrical release and everything. The total business, of course, it was years in the making. You saw how Renee Auberjonois felt about playing the character of Odo, in Star Trek. And it really is, I don't want to talk too much on it right here. Maybe we'll get into it during the climax. We'll see. But I always dedicate episodes of Star Trek to, Star Trek, of Sovryn Tech. Freudian slip there. I always dedicate episodes of Sovryn Tech to when members of the Star Trek family die. We did not just lose Renee Auberjonois. In the past week, we also lost DC Fontana, who is about as important to Star Trek as Gene Roddenberry was. She has written some of my favorite episodes of Star Trek. She has written some of my favorite Star Trek novels. She has been behind the scenes and keeping Star Trek, dare we say, shipshape for decades. At least, going into the next generation. DC Fontana very much kept Star Trek alive when Star Trek was, going through its own dark period. Where there wasn't a whole lot of Star Trek. Frankly, the considering the shit show that Star Trek Discovery is and that CBS All Access is, I'd be just as happy that Star Trek, that Star Trek was in another dark period where there just was no Star Trek. I'd rather have no Star Trek than have Star Trek Discovery. It's that bad. Folks, we've got great tech subjects to get into. We're going to get into as many as we can. We've got them. You're going to let me open up with this. It's my fucking show, so we're opening up with this. I don't like it when any member of the Star Trek family dies. To understand Odo, because we also had to dedicate an episode to Aaron Eisenberg, who played Nog on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, who had his own great moments with the character of Odo. But when I was a very young boy, about 11, I had my moment with Rene Auberjonois. In fact, I remember calling him Odo when I met him, because, I was in touch with reality. I understood that Star Trek was a TV show, okay? But it just seemed like the most natural thing to call him because that's how I always thought of him. He was the first person that I had ever met, the first, Star Trek celebrity, whatever, that I had met at a convention. This is more or less my first convention that I went to. I went to the Syracuse Hotel. This is in the early 90s. Deep Space Nine was a fairly new property at this point. And he was the lead. I mean, this was before it was done by Creation Entertainment. This is before they had the shows where, you had 20, 30 celebrities or whatever. You really only had one big name, okay, at these things at the time. They were still fairly small scale. And I got to meet him. You get in line, you pay to get the autograph, the whole thing. I did the whole thing. And I called him that, and he just kind of laughed, and he laughed like Odo when I called him that, which was so great. I can barely remember when he was talking on stage, and I sat there and he was talking on stage. I can barely remember what he was even saying. I know he told the story of how he landed the part and how he changed his voice and everything, to be a lot gruffier, like we all know Odo to have. But what was really amazing, and I say this because after that convention, I went to every convention that I could. And when I'd get a little bit older and I had more autonomy, I went apeshit and went to tons. I've lost count of how many conventions I had gone to. But I had gone to other conventions, and not everybody was remotely as gracious or as kind, even when I was really young. It's like, oh yeah, of course he was nice to kids, but adults he's an asshole or something. No. There's plenty of people in the, as I call it, the Star Trek family that were assholes to kids too, including me. Those are stories for another time, and I'm not going to speak ill of the dead, at least not here. But Rene Auberjonois was so incredibly kind to me, and you don't again. That is somewhat of a rarity. Today, maybe it's more commonplace, but at the time, science fiction wasn't was still considered, kind of a bastard genre. It was not as big a deal as it is today. But I remember, I had a few minutes with him, and which was amazing in and of itself, right? He really took the time. He was just such a sweet man. Which is funny because he is, again, on Deep Space Nine, Rene Auberjonois, Odo seems like such, so rough and tough and, tries to show very little emotions. Of course, later on, with Kira, that'd be different, but you know what I mean? And just for him to be, again, so kind to me, it was really, really something. And I've always had a special fascination with the character of Odo because he was somebody kind of like Data, kind of like Spock, not where he was exploring his humanity. He was exploring, he didn't know what he was. He didn't know where he came from. He was a person he was literally nothing. And what do you become? And when he finds out that, he's a changeling, and spoiler alerts, folks, even though the show's been out for 20 years, and he finds out that, over 20 years, that he's with basically the enemy, that he's a part of that species with the Dominion, and he's a founder. Just a great character arc. And Rene Auberjonois sold all of that because he had to, while he was always rough and tumble, he also, when he finds out who his people are, when he falls in love with Kira, go through the motions, he has to become incredibly vulnerable and has to admit to it and fess up to it. And he just did that so fucking well. Deep Space Nine is a very special show. We seem to be losing. Granted, people get older, but in '79 you could say that's a good life. But like I say, any age is too young. I'm glad that he got to see the great documentary, What We Left Behind, that, you know, hopefully he got to see somewhat of a resurgence and popularity and recognition for Star Trek Deep Space Nine, because, you know, DS9 was part of like I said, a bastard genre, that being sci-fi, but then even within sci-fi, and particularly within Star Trek, it was considered the bastard stepchild, right? I mean, it really was. I mean, to me, when I was growing up, it was just Star Trek. And so, okay, that's good enough, because any hour of Star Trek, minus Discovery, any hour of Star Trek is better than any hour of anything else on planet Earth, except for maybe Babylon 5. That'd be the only thing that would top it. But that's how I felt about it. So I didn't know that people didn't like Deep Space Nine. I didn't understand that concept at all. And, you know, again, it really stuck with me. That my first, convention experience, my first real convention experience was with a cast member of Deep Space Nine, and that stuck with me. And again, I can remember that moment so well. And, you know, we as humans, when we're children, we don't always get treated with incredible kindness, and we don't always have someone that takes time to answer our questions, especially people who genuinely are as incredibly busy as Rene Auberjonois was. You know, I mean, this is when, again, it's not like he was past his time. This is while he was filming, I think, like season 2 or season 3 of Deep Space Nine, and yet here he is spending a few minutes with a little Jewish boy from New York. And I'll never forget that. I worry that I think that in our modern entertainment industry, I feel like a lot of people don't take the time. Part of that gets ruined by social media, but I feel like a lot of the quote unquote celebrities would probably not be as willing to take that kind of time with people, because now they all get basically treated like gods, even people that are in science fiction. Because now, sci-fi and basically nerd movies, quote unquote, they're fucking everywhere and everybody's into them. Okay. But at the time it was a little more insular, and it was just so great even then, like I said, there were assholes, there were celebrities, but more often than not, these people were just so incredibly kind. And because I think they saw in your eyes the passion you had for the work that they were doing. I think Rene Auberjonois saw the passion for Star Trek that I had in my eyes at the time, and he responded to that, and it was really beautiful. So an absolute loss. Again, just an incredibly sweet guy, who actually very intelligent guy. I can say that as well. What a shame. And also, I don't want to take anything away. DC Fontana, I am a big fan. Big fan, and that is another loss of really just, a great writer and a genuine human being. 2019's been a hell of a year for all this stuff. And as far as tech goes, it's not getting much better, but maybe you can relate to everything that I just happened to cover with you. Here's something I want you to consider. I've got a Sovryn Tech sponsor I want you to consider. I have had the great pleasure of, 8 years ago, I moved to New Hampshire for a little thing, but it ain't a little thing anymore, a little thing called the Free State Project. Okay. And I moved here, and, one of the things that kind of gave me confidence in moving here was I remember hearing, the media coming out of New Hampshire, and there's so much, obviously, Sovryn Tech does, and, thousands and thousands of listeners to this, many of which aren't even in New Hampshire, but here's your shot. Listen to me here. But I remember hearing that, no, if you want to hang out with some nerds, the Free State Project has got some nerds in it. And you know what? It was absolutely true. And I have hung out with just some of the coolest people, and many of them being major Star Trek fans. In fact, I have, at events in New Hampshire, I have been on panels often tech panels, because, it's what I'm known for. And, I'll ask people at these panels, these panelists, who are often all people who are also participants in the Free State Project, I'll ask them, I'll say, what got you into tech? And pretty much all of them would say Star Trek, right? And so I feel right at home. Like, okay, people get my passion about Star Trek. Awesome. And then also they get my passion about personal liberty and about liberty. And that's really what the Free State Project is all about. Being passionate about liberty and getting liberty in your lifetime. It's not a political organization. You have to understand this. This is about getting at least 20,000 people, but there have been far more than that have already signed up. Getting them together in one geographic area to achieve that liberty in their lifetime. And on the side, we get to talk about Star Trek now and again. Because you get to meet up with these people. There's hundreds of events throughout the year that you go to, and there's even the big ones like PorcFest, Liberty Forum, and so on. It's a fantastic time. I want you to check it out. Come and hang out with me. You want to come talk Star Trek? You want to come talk a little liberty? Talk a little anarchy? Woo! How about that? Oh, yes. This is the place to do it. Come on down. Come on up. Whatever direction it takes you to get here. And because these people, participants in the Free State Project, are coming from all over the world, from all directions. Come on. What I want you to do is go to the website, fsp.org/join. This is the important part. Okay? Go to that exact URL. You'll find it in the show notes. Okay? FSP, as in Free State Project, fsp.org/join. If you are interested in getting freedom in your life right now, you want to sign up for the Free State Project. Go there. You can do it right there. I remember years ago, I went to the website. I was mover, and I actually moved. There used to be a move counter on the website. I don't think it's, or I haven't seen it there anymore. But anyway, the website's fantastic. But yeah, there used to be a little move counter whenever somebody would verify that they moved. I was number 966. You can be one of the thousands and thousands, not of Sovereign Tech listeners, but of participants for the Free State Project. So come on, Free State, again, fsp.org/join. Join the Free State Project. fsp.org/join. And I thank them for sponsoring a very independent voice like Sovereign Tech. That comes right out of New Hampshire itself. When I'm in town, anyway. Sometimes I'm traveling, and, well, anyway, the nice thing about podcasting, it can come from anywhere. Woo! So, anyway, but yeah, fsp.org/join. Check it out. Make sure you use that URL, that exact one, /join at the end of it, all right? Okay, now, let's start talking it up. We got into, some, look, folks, I used to make it a personal mandate. Okay, a mandate for a mandate for the show that I quote Star Trek at least once per episode of Sovereign Tech. You understand? So don't think that this is out of place for me to talk about, but it's actually fitting in nicely with conversations that we've had on episodes of Sovereign Tech, as well as episodes of, the Zomia 1 Underground Q&As, which you got to become a member of the Zomia 1 Underground to do that. You want to do that, you go to zomia1.com. You're going to get your hookup, okay? Just look on the right-hand side there. You'll see where you can sign up, and you get access to thousands of hours of content and new content every single week. So this is something that was sent in to me from a Sovereign Tech listener, and it has to do with Plex. Now, Plex is not the first thing that I think a lot of people think of when they think of streaming services. And we have to caveat this a little bit. The irony, so 8 years ago, again, when I moved to New Hampshire, okay, and I, and I started Sovereign Tech right here in New Hampshire. When I started that, the tech world, I got to admit it, was a somewhat more limited place. Meaning that, when you're talking tech, you're kind of limited in what subjects you could really get into. In fact, I used to get people complaining very early on in the show. In fact, do you want to know how early on? This is when I was sharing the show on Google+. Ooh, that's gone. But I'd have people complaining, please don't put your ideology into the tech show. That's because at the time, people didn't see, even though it was already starting there and I was covering it at the time, at the time, people didn't really see how, wow, like topics around tech, like just covering one tech giant. And you pick your one out of the Sinister Six. You want Microsoft, Facebook, Google, you take your pick. That just covering one tech giant literally speaks to every aspect of modern civilization in some form or fashion. Entertainment, health, places that you wouldn't think it would matter. Oh yes, it matters. So you would think that me talking about streaming services or getting on here and, screaming and hollering about streaming services, well, what the fuck does that have to do with tech? Well, of course, it has everything really to do with tech. Now, if I'm just coming on and talking about a certain show or something, okay, fine, maybe I should save that for the climax. But talking about streaming services in general and the way that art, that's ultimately what it's about, how art gets transmitted, is an evergreen topic and an incredibly important topic when it comes to the relationship between technology and the human condition, because art is at the very core of the human condition. It is one of the first ways, if not the first way or earliest way, that we expressed ourselves, even before perhaps we could speak. So it's an important thing to cover. And right now, I think we are running into, and actually we briefly hinted at this on TIE Fighter Renegades, the recent episode that Rob and I did of that on Zomia 1. You can find that in the same feed as the show. We talked about how with Disney Plus, and we did a review of Disney Plus on Sovryn Tech recently, and we covered a bit about it. The Mandalorian's phenomenal, but let's be clear here, right? Disney owns 20th Century Fox now. And that means they own a lot of movies that you didn't realize they owned. And Disney has this propensity to lock certain things away in what gets called the Disney Vault. This has been around for decades, okay? And used to be a crazy, again, we talked about this on TIE Fighter Renegades. It used to be a crazy thing that would happen where back when VHS movies were a thing, this also happened with DVDs. Ever since streaming became a thing, not so much, but streaming services have done this to some degree as well. Like where, there used to be, this is unbelievable, what are normally serious, and I mean this, what are normally serious news outlets. And, a news outlet like Gizmodo is more often than not, covering serious news, would have very popular stories that were literally all about, this is what's leaving Netflix this month, you better go fucking watch it now. And it's, these articles would drive me up the fucking wall, because it's like, well, why don't you just, own the DVD or the Blu-ray, and then you never have to fucking worry about it, And this is, the concerns around having access to content that previously you used to, when you would put down money to get access to it, you would have it forever, right? Like when you bought the Cinderella VHS or the Lion King DVD or whatever, you basically had it forever. Okay. And, or as long as the VHS lasted or the DVD lasted. Now, if the way that you get access to a lot of this stuff is through a streaming service, well, you get it for as long as you pay for, subscribe to the streaming service. But then what can happen is the streaming service can take something down or can make changes to things. Like how there's another change to Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope on Disney Plus as compared to even the Blu-rays that just came out a few years ago. So I say all this because one of the concerns that Rob had brought up on TIE Fighter Renegades is that the Alien movies, as an Aliens, right? Ridley Scott, James Cameron, etc. One of my favorite franchises. That franchise, Disney owns that now. And I didn't even think about it. Me, who is trying to be on the pulse of as many things as possible, as a frankly, a tech journalist and a podcaster, and somebody that talks a lot about entertainment as well, I didn't even think about that. And I was like, oh, fuck. This can either be really great because Disney might put the right minds behind it and do something with the Alien franchise proper, or it might be terrible because, fuck, they might lock it away, in the Disney vault. Now, I'm bringing this point up to highlight a first point in what we're about to cover. And the first point is that with these streaming services, you really don't, you have no guarantee of access to a movie or whatever the fuck that you want to watch. There's no guarantees. Okay, as to where, again, when you bought a Blu-ray, a DVD, VHS, whatever, or even if you do what I think is a damn proper thing, you go to a torrent site and you download a movie file and you keep it on your hard drive. You have, when you want to watch something, you just double click, or you pop in the disc, or you pop in the tape, or whatever. I mean, actually, it's funny. I was looking up VHS or VCRs. I was looking up VCRs the other day, and I can't believe it. VCRs cost almost more now than they did when I was a teenager. I remember when I bought my first VCR. It was a Philips 18 micron head. Remember VCRs had heads, right? And normally they'd have four, like it'd be a 2 head, a 4 head, and then Philips had the 18 micron head, and I said, well, God damn it, I gotta have that. But I was looking at this the other day, and it was unbelievable. I was like, wait a minute, like that 18, that really advanced top of the line VCR that I bought in I guess maybe around 1998, 1999. That only cost me $140. Shit, I got to spend $200-$300 if I wanted to get a VCR now. Whew, I don't know if I'm paying that. But anyway, bottom line, with streaming services, you don't own shit, and it's debatable whether or not you're going to ever, that you'll consistently have access to something you want to watch. Now, there's an argument to be made that 99% of what has been made in the past 20 years or so, we'll say the past decade, how about that, is so forgettable and so much garbage and shit that you don't need to watch it more than once anyway. You'd never watch, one of those movies again. And certainly I find myself, as somebody who's quite an aficionado with a lot of this stuff, and has a massive Blu-ray collection, quite frankly, I am hard-pressed to think of movies that have come out over the past 10 years that I would genuinely want to watch more than once, or TV shows. I mean, they're by and large, they're all horrible, that come out today, and so I guess you could argue that, well, if you lose access to them, who the hell cares? Because I didn't want to watch them more than once anyway. They're shit. Well, yeah, there's something to that. And it almost makes you wonder if it was on purpose. But anyway, I digress. I'm getting in now. See, now I'm commenting on the quality of entertainment. Well, that's not what we're here to talk about. But I'm a big fan of entertainment. And what I like to watch, and I like to watch it over and over again, right? Like the Alien movies. Ellen and I went to theaters recently to go see the 40th anniversary release of the original Alien from '79. That's how much I've seen that movie so many times, but you better believe I'll gladly go to theaters and see it again, or I'll pop in my Blu-ray. I will watch those kind of films, and because they're so well done, there's so much more to see every time that you watch it, even if you've watched it 100 times, which the first Alien, I bet I have. At least I've watched it that many times. So, all of that said, why don't we get into the story here? But that you get the point. Okay, on that, is that you don't really have access to this stuff. This is why, because we're going to talk about Plex. This is why Plex is something that is popular with people who are really serious about their entertainment. Okay, like myself. Because Plex was it was a bit of a hybrid. Okay, where you could stream your private MP3 collection, your private movie collection, if it's digital. I mean, you weren't going to stream Blu-rays, okay, not Blu-ray discs anyway. But if you have a massive media file collection, even photos, whatever, I mean, it's really impressive how much Plex, how many different formats Plex worked with, and how many different devices it worked with. I mean, you can get a Plex server or the Plex app, or even just the web portal running on basically any machine. It's really, really impressive. Even if you could say to me, well, if I have network area storage, I have a NAS, and I just use the software built into my NAS to stream my MP3s and do my photos and videos and whatever. Okay, that's fine. But I guarantee you, in the app store for your NAS, because, if it's like Synology, they have these, I bet they offer the Plex media server, right? Because Plex's UI was so gorgeous, and it was a very solid way of, I should say a lot of this is past tense, but it was a very solid way of getting access to, to your media files. Okay. So Plex is popular because it gave you the ability to stream, just like, all these people who use Spotify or, that are part of the cult of Netflix, and don't have any brains left, and, or people that watch CBS All Access or whatever it was, if you got your hands on a media file, you could stream it through Plex and you could kind of do the same thing. And it more or less worked very well. Plex is very popular because of this. Okay, because there's some of us who still like to own shit. We're not communists. Because, let's call it, if you're into Spotify, if you're into Netflix and things like this, you don't actually own any of that. And, before anybody says that this is, I want to mention this, before anybody says that that say like the movie industry never wanted you to own movies or never wanted you like to have home video, there's some truth to suggest that yes, and there are quotes from, the MPAA and others from like the 1980s before VCRs dominated, right? And VHS dominated really, that, yeah, they didn't like the idea of, you having a video recording machine at home, of some kind. Okay. So there's some argument that could be made there, but let's be clear here. And you can watch all of the, when movies are in theaters, you get a trailer, right, to tell you that the movie's in theaters. When movies come out on home video, you get trailers for when they're coming out on home video. And these are still made today, okay? There's an interesting conversation to have around these trailers, actually, that are it's very strange. And I don't know if I want to go into that right now. I'll just say this. It's almost the idea of you buying a movie or even a TV series, whatever is getting advertised in the TV spot. They make it like, they're trying to sell you that if you own this movie, okay, that you will live the life that you just saw in the little TV spot. Because they have like this, they have the guy with the guy with the great trailer voice, like own it today on, Blu-ray, or, experience it today, blah, blah, blah. Like somehow you are going to get to live that life if you own the movie. And that's kind of weird in and of itself. But regardless, the point being is that great trailer voice, okay, that great voice actor would literally say, and you can see it, you can look at the screenshots, you can go watch all of the fucking TV spots that you want for home video releases, and they say, own it today. Those are the exact words that they will often use. Own it today on DVD or Blu-ray or 4K or whatever the fuck it is. Okay, that they want you to watch. So, and I think that makes it very clear that if you don't have it on, in either as a video file, right, MP4, MKV, whatever, or if you don't have it on Blu-ray or DVD or, pick your video format, that you don't actually own it. And so basically you don't own it. And that's why I say, like, if you're into Spotify and if you're into Netflix and all this, you're a communist because, you're not really owning these things. Plex allowed you, again, to stream and own it. So that's the value prop with Plex. And that's why people, frankly, are very passionate about it, right? Because clearly they're so passionate about their content, that they want to own it in the first place and not be communists about it, like Netflix users. So now what has happened, and I think it was a matter of time for this to occur. Plex has, over the years, they've gotten into where you can get podcasts through Plex, which I thought was a great move. If it's an all-in-one media center, why the fuck wouldn't you have podcasts on there? That's a very valid form and great form of media. I assume you think the same because you're listening to my voice right now, and you've been listening to Sovryn Tech for however long that you've been listening. Then they started doing web shows. Okay, we get it, and that's pure streaming, right? Doing the web shows. And they be free web shows. I've never really bothered with it. To Plex's credit, any of these new features that they added in, they always allowed you to hide and turn off, and obviously I would. Because, again, I'm using Plex to stream my shit that I own, okay? Now, before anybody says, well, the real communists are the ones who just download all this stuff for free, that's an assumption, Okay. And it's a wrong one because, for example, we have the research, we have the numbers that show that people that torrent music, the bulk of the people that torrent music are also the highest spenders on music. Okay? That is not, just because somebody torrents something, in no way correlates to the idea that they get everything for free. Okay? Or that they're some kind of freeloaders. No fucking way. Okay? And if you're somebody who subscribes to Disney Plus and you download episodes of The Mandalorian on torrents anyway, I think you're totally justified, in doing that. It's the only way that you can get it, but you are putting your money down. If you're putting your money where your mouth is, I think you should be able to get access to it. That's a whole other conversation to get into, and there's a lot of fine points to get into with that. But again, we're going to come full circle on this. Okay? So Plex has been getting into this, adding in content that is more not your private collection, not your personal collection, but stuff streaming from quote unquote the cloud. Anyway, okay. Now this has gotten bigger, and again, it was really a matter of time of when this was going to drop. I want to say it was back in August when there was the big announcement, because I have Plex, and they send out emails with updates of what's going on and new features and everything. I can say that, one thing that's pissed me off for the past few months is that the UI has changed dramatically, like on the Android app, as well as the web UI has changed and some others. I do not like the new UI, but whatever. If the functionality's there, I'll deal with it and I'll learn. Okay. New UI, we talk about this all the time. The only real reason that anybody does a new UI is generally to please investors of some kind. And I'm sure Plex has probably brought in some kind of VC funding of some sort. But in August, I want to say, of this year, 2019, I saw where, and they announced, where they made a deal with Warner Brothers, where they were going to have ad-supported free viewing of whatever movies and whatever TV shows. I mean, Warner Brothers is a massive conglomerate, media conglomerate, that they, were going to allow to be on Plex at any given moment. Now, that in and of itself stands against what makes Plex great, right? And I'm actually going to read the email from a Sovereign Tech listener. This is why I'm talking about this. Getting a demand or, a question from a Sovereign Tech listener, a great one, and he makes great points. I am going to cover it here. This is not just to feed my own ego or what I'm interested in. But I mean, that stands in contrast to the idea of you streaming your collection. Okay. But again, the patterns seem to be developing, especially with the addition of web shows. Podcasting's one thing, but when they start putting in the web shows, now you're trying to take on YouTube or something. I don't know what the fuck. But anyway, now this has finally come to light. And I'm going to read the email from my listener and from the Sovereign Tech listener. And we're going to break this down and talk about it a bit more, because I do think it speaks to an overall problem. But let's get into it. Here it is. And the email was titled "Plex Jumps the Shark." Oh, fuck me. That's how it opens up. I love it. We don't need to mince words in this life. And I don't mince words on this show, and I'm glad in life that, also that my list, or that the Sovereign Tech listeners don't mince words either. So let's go. Oh, fuck me. Plex announced yesterday that they are going to stream ad-supported content to Plex Media Server, and are even using a stupid fucking cutesy acronym, which is AVOD, A-V-O-D, to describe it. Now, there's a link here, and it's the announcement from Plex. I'll put the link in the show notes for you to check out if you want. Reading on with the email. You know how I like nonviolent communication, but I also really liked Penn and Teller's bullshit, so I'm just going to say it. Plex are a bunch of assholes. Woo! They always marketed themselves as the epitome of supposed cord cutting and self-hosted media streaming solutions, but they know all the content that people have linked to their PMS, Plex Media Service, or server. Anyway, and now we can guarantee they are busy correlating that with all the other surveillance networks working to manipulate us. A few years ago, as a show of support to those offering self-hosted solution to things, I considered tossing them a few bucks for their lifetime Plex Pass thing. After thinking about it a bit, I canceled my plans because even though their media client is fantastic, and I liked how they allowed all my stuff and all their stuff to live on my side of my air-gapped network, I greatly disliked how they pushed/prompted their cloud user accounts. Made no sense for self-hosting, so figured they had nefarious motives. I love this. Stanley, breaking in for a second here. I love this. This is the kind of paranoia we need to go through life with. Okay, we're going to describe more in a second. And he says, reading on, and it rubbed me, or, let's see. Yeah, so figured they had nefarious motives, hated their legal small print, so I didn't trust them, and it rubbed me the wrong way how their clients and their server especially were not open sourced. So I really didn't trust them. I kept thinking, well, they reserve their rights to change their, the terms of service and privacy policy at any time. Not that they actually matter. Can't even wipe my ass with them. Effectively without warning. And it's ridiculously hard to audit closed boundaries. So I bet they're planning to work against me at some point. That's what he was thinking. For what it's worth, independently, a couple days ago, and he has a couple solutions here. I'm going to read those, at the end. But let's be clear with the problems here with this. Okay. This is, I don't think, and clearly it didn't seem to be a surprise to him. It wouldn't be a surprise to me that Plex was collecting some kind of metrics, some kind of data or metadata around your habits of what you're listening to. Now, one of the things that made it a little palatable was that not everybody, right, would have, say, all their MP3s tagged the same way, and it'd be a little more convoluted. It wasn't standardized like, say, what you're listening to on Spotify or on Apple Music or Google Play Music or YouTube Premium or whatever fucking, ass services out there. Okay. It wasn't that much. So it was a little more convoluted. But regardless, I think we all kind of expected sooner or later that they would be. That would happen. And and they had to collect some metrics, right? Because you could look up some data of what you had listened to the most, but generally you just hope that was based on a file. Well, it's a pretty good bet that that's not the case anymore. Okay. That what Plex has now, let's be clear here. First off, thankfully, because they addressed this in the blog post that they wrote, because again, a lot of this content is going to be ad supported that they're letting you stream for free. And you could say, wow, what a great deal. Well, we'll talk about why it's not such a great deal. But fortunately, the ads are not going to get injected when you're playing your personal content. That would have just, then everybody would have thrown away Plex. It was, fuck it, we're not going to mess with this, because that defeats the whole purpose of, if you wanted ads in your private collection, you fucking put ads there, right? But I want to ask you this. Now, granted, there's money to be made from the ads, no doubt about that. But you can't make those ads too egregious. Otherwise, then, people will stop using your service. Plenty anyway, that's a whole other argument about how other streaming services handle ads. Regardless, why do you think Warner Brothers was willing to do this deal with Plex? Probably because Warner Brothers was going to get a whole lot of very useful data, from people using Plex. Is it a cheaper way also than Warner Brothers starting their own streaming service like every other fucking company is doing and then canceling after less than a year? Yeah, it's certainly cheaper than that, but part of the reason that a lot of these companies do want to create their own streaming services also comes from the fact that they want to collect such and so much data. Okay? And look, it's not just, let's be clear on what this data is. It's not just data, and we need to talk about this because this is important. It's not just the data of what music you're listening to or what movies you happen to be watching. Okay, it's also the data that comes along with you downloading an app. Okay, here's a funny thing. So the other day, I'm going to Burger King, just kind of out of an emergency, right? And Burger King has this deal going on. Okay, we have to talk about the importance of music listening habits and that data collection as well, but we'll get to that in a second. So I'm at Burger King for a little bit of, it's kind of an emergency thing, whatever, just wanting some kind of food. And when I'm getting it, okay, there's a little contest that you have on it. Now, these aren't anything new, right? Like McDonald's has done this Monopoly stuff forever, okay? And this is getting into where tech becomes a part of every aspect of life today. Like there's literally nothing, I was saying earlier how Sovryn Tech was initially a very limited show. Not anymore. Now there's nothing it doesn't touch. There's nothing we can't talk about. We're going to get into health, like I said, in the next segment. Okay. So I'm at Burger King and you get this little pull tab and you win, I don't know. I think it said I won a double cheeseburger of some kind. Now, I don't give a shit about that because I'm a vegetarian. Okay, so that's not going to do anything for me. Here's the thing. When years ago, in years past, when you get one of those little tabs, you could just use it like a coupon. You could walk right up to the counter, because I've done this before. You walk right up to the counter and you get your free fries or your free double cheeseburger or whatever. And all you have to do is hand them that little pull tab. Not anymore. Oh, no. Now, you have to download the Burger King app onto your smartphone, put in the code that's on this little coupon thing, right? That you tore off of your fry, your large fry, or your Diet Coke or something. Okay, you have to put that into the app and then use the app and have the app get scanned at the register at the restaurant that you happen to be at. Now, why do you think they want you to go through all that hassle of installing the app? One is that, I mean, maybe, the first thing to consider is that this is creating friction, and a lot of people, probably like myself, would just toss, even if I weren't a vegetarian, would just toss the coupon out anyway, because it's like, no, I'm not going to install your fucking app. What the hell do you think this is? Okay, but the reason they want you to install that app is because that app is able to collect so much metadata about what you're doing, and having to scan things through the app. A coupon is basically like a dollar bill. Other than maybe some code on it, you can't really track it. You can't trace it, and it doesn't even give off RFID or any horseshit like that, right? Okay. No. When you have to use an app, they're going to know who's signed in on that app, what's the IP address. There's so much information that comes along with that, and you thought you were just getting a free double cheeseburger. No, you're not, motherfucker. It ain't free. You're giving up every ounce of privacy that you can imagine in so doing. Because who the hell knows what else, what permissions that app even has. And you could say, well, I didn't allow it to blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, hopefully the app will still work if you didn't allow it a certain permission. And the other thing is that we know these apps can supersede a lot of these permission soft switch controls anyway. We've covered that just in the past month on this show. So the Plex app collects a ton of data. I guarantee you that was part of the deal with Warner Brothers in them doing that. Okay, so there's all that data that Warner Brothers now, as a partner with Plex, gets access to, okay, that you didn't even think about, or most people didn't think about. Clearly, from this email, my listeners, okay, are definitely, to say a cut above is an understatement of a lifetime. People are fucking brilliant, and I love you, okay? Now, the other part of this is that your movie watching, your music listening, even your podcast listening habits, whatever your media consumption habits, let's call it that. This is, and we've known this for years. Okay, here, let me ask you this. Why do you think that, this was probably 9-10 years ago, that Google started their own music service with Google Play Music, which was separate from YouTube, by the way. Why do you think they got into that? Because they knew, and they probably learned from Apple, but they knew just how much your music listening habits says about you, not just in the raw data of the matter, but also psychologically. And that information, even though we usually never see these, because I bet these spreadsheets that Google compiles, and you better believe Spotify and everybody else does this too, only goes to, the upper crust, right? The creme de la creme, the top, like your I don't know. I don't want to say Procter & Gamble, because Procter & Gamble called bullshit, like on Facebook advertising, but your bigger advertisers, Google probably has spreadsheets that says, oh, well, let us tell you about our users. Okay. And a lot of that is based upon, because your music listening habits, they really do. Think about it. Think about how much you judge others based upon the music that they listen to. What do you think Google does with that kind of info? Precisely. They do a lot. Okay? And Plex now ultimately has a lot of this, and they are making deals with massive companies. Again, it'd be one thing we could kind of deal with it if it, like Plex was just the little company that gave you that nice little media server that did so goddamn well. Does the company need to make money? Yep, I get that. Is the Plex Pass selling well? Probably not. I tried it out for a little bit, but the little bit of feature add that it gives you just really isn't worth it. Not that I wouldn't mind supporting them. Of course, like my listener, I'm not going to bother doing that now. Okay? I get it that maybe they feel like they need to make money, but I mean, the funny thing here is that this is, while it can be a hard thing to do overall, what money do they really need to make, considering that it's all based around, my personal content off of my own hard drive? I'm not even using their servers to store it. I'm using it, say, to, help out with the streaming of it. I mean, it shouldn't really be that expensive of a proposition. And in fact, really, you need access to those protocols. But even then, really, all of that can be done client side. All of that can more or less be done locally. Okay. Would it be, is it not something that the average tech user would be able to do? Yeah. Okay. But so what? Also, the average tech user probably doesn't have all their own files. I mean, that's a whole other situation. And I have an appeal to get to at the end of this. But my point being, okay, is that this is getting a little ugly. This is not just that kind to cord cutters, kind to self-hosters, piece of kit that we were effectively sold on for a very long time. Because you better believe that, again, that they're going to algorithmically, they're going to want to feed you content that you might think is more relevant. Again, that's part of their deal with, say, Warner Brothers and whoever else happens to jump in on this. This is going to turn into where it becomes, instead of it being a way of freeing yourself, okay, from, the big heavies in the entertainment industry, this is going to be just locking you in more to the entertainment industry. That's what this is going to turn into. And again, the data collection is a very real fucking problem. Okay. And what that data collection means, again, I know you're thinking that, well, what does it matter if they know? I mean, everybody, like right now, what's everybody doing? They're sharing their Spotify results for 2019 or something. Do you realize that all that information is getting sold off to advertisers and collected elsewhere and is creating quite a nasty little database and profile about you? Of course it is. Now, if you're okay with that, you're okay with that. Okay, like that's on you. But the point being is that those of us who aren't okay with that, who don't want to get profiled, who don't want all of this data being out there about us or whatever, okay, we are running out of options. Now, there are some options. I'm going to finish reading the rest of this email because he lists off a few. He says, for what it's worth, independently, a couple days ago, I happened across a new pre-release project in the self-hosted media streaming space called Olaris. And I'll put a link in the show notes for that. Also, and they're on Git, and it's a Go-based cross-platform, really, really interesting. There's a couple others, Emby, which is closed source though, and then there's Jellyfin, which looks kind of interesting, but they do have to run the .NET framework, I guess. So anyway, there's some options that people are going for. Now, why are these options getting created? Is Jellyfin or Olaris getting created so that they can eventually down the line do a deal with Warner Brothers? No, this is because there are people who are just like me and this listener who are damned passionate about their media files, about their media collection, okay? And they go back to it over and over again, and they want to have the ease of access to it that comes along with. And again, this, Plex became a big deal just in homes. It wasn't even something that you streamed elsewhere, right? Like I said, I could stream it at the gym, but I have to be connected to Wi-Fi, of course, to do so. But I can do that, and it's really handy for that, no doubt. But let's be clear here that this isn't, because I think a lot of critics of what I'm saying would say something to the effect of, well, then what are you doing with playing your stuff on a smartphone? Blah 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 blah. Wait a minute. Like, there's no guarantee that that's initially what this was all about. It's becoming so much more. But initially, Plex was just something that you basically used within your home. That's how this all started. And now, it turns into a deal with Warner Brothers. Should I be happy for them? No, again, I'm not. Like, I don't like what this points at and where this is going and the fact that this is all getting collected. So my appeal to you is this. And I really think we have to start looking back in this direction. And I've talked about this before. Get back to locally hosted files, okay? And if you're going to the gym, I mean, again, I think we did all right. And look, I'm a guy who I have literally millions of songs at my fingertips, locally hosted. You understand? Okay, I've got an 8 terabyte hard drive right next to me. There's so many movies, TV shows. There's so much shit on that. I don't think in a normal human lifetime, I don't think I could consume all that once through right now. And I just keep adding on to it, whether I listen to it or not. Right? But I can really get away with, when I go to the gym or if I'm going for a car ride or something like that, I'm pretty sure I can do okay with, only whatever could fit on, say, 128 gig SD card, micro SD card or something, right? Pretty sure I'll be just fine. If you have no problem with any of this, you want to keep rocking all these streaming services and whatever else, you don't care about owning your media, you don't care about any of that, that is on you, okay? But I also don't think that, just like most people who don't realize how much data is being collected and how much they're being tracked and so on when they even just use a Google search or when they're on social media, I don't think you realize what these streaming services say about you, and even ones, and this is fair warning, even ones that you think are all about your personal collection like Plex, no, not at all. Now, or at least not anymore. There was a time when, yeah, I would say Plex was one of the good guys, okay, and I'd even recommend it, but ouch. This is not looking good. I mean, yes, you can turn all of this off, certainly. Is that going to stop Plex from collecting all this data and sharing it with their media partners? No way. Of course they're still going to do that. So I say this to you. You might think that it's extreme, but one thing we've learned, certainly in the 8 years that Sovryn has been going, okay, but one thing we've certainly learned over the past 10 years overall is that some of the extreme paranoia in the tech world has turned out to be absolutely true. And as we often say on this show, any and all data that you produce, create, and have can and eventually will be used against you. We'll be right back with some more Sovryn Tech. Woo! Hey, if you have a project that needs reliable cryptocurrency data, check out blocktap.io. Blocktap.io is a universal cryptocurrency API. You can get historical prices for Bitcoin and other digital assets that you can use to build charts and do market analysis. Blockchain data is also indexed, so you can get transaction statistics, address balances, and more for Bitcoin and other networks. Blocktap.io is free for personal use, and you don't even need to create an account to access the API. To get started, try some of the example queries on the homepage at blocktap.io. Again, that's blocktap.io. blocktap.io, and we thank them for sponsoring Sovryn Tech. Woo! Let's get back to the show.
HackSec.
There has got to be a company. There's got to be a company out there that would. I mean, look, I get it. I mean, yeah, it'd be nice to have some kind of media playing device. I mean, really, it could be a laptop with a fucking 5 terabyte hard drive in it. That is possible still, as much as it seems that it's not with, the laptops that get schlepped on you. I mean, yeah, it'd be great. And actually, they are capable of that. Their smartphones for a few years now have been able to, you could put a 2 terabyte micro SD card in them, right? But the problem was we didn't have 2 terabyte micro SD cards. I think that now we more or less do, or we have something close. So, there's options as far as that goes. Anyway, I was just going to say, it'd be great if there was a company out there that really, and I know they're out there, we've talked about them. There are companies that will sell you just a straight up MP3 player or something that can play little, maybe that has a little screen on it that can play videos or whatever else. Something akin to an iPod Classic, again, iPod Classic, that, maybe has 2 terabytes or however much on it. I would love if there was a company out there. Maybe someday there will be. But a company you do want to check out. And I mean this, you want to check them out. Vaultoro. What the hell is that, you might be asking me? This is something you need to be jumping on right now, okay? Especially when it comes to maybe getting some financial security. Vaultoro. It's vault, so like a vault, okay? How's that for financial security? Like vault, V-A-U-L-T, and then oro. Oro is Spanish for gold. Vaultoro. So what do you think that means? Yeah, this has to do with gold, but not just gold. Oh, no. Also, the latest and greatest in, well, I don't want to say fintech because that word gets bandied around all over the place, but also cryptocurrencies, gold and cryptocurrencies. This is your place to get your hookup with both. Vaultoro.com. Okay, you want to go to that website. You can get a gold wallet opened up in seconds for free. Get your hookup and then you can start dealing gold, cryptocurrencies, going all over the place. You want this to happen. You want this action. They have been in business since 2015. They are one of the few companies in the blockchain space overall that I trust. And I do. I trust them. They do things right. And, being around since 2015 in the crypto space, I mean, you might as well have been around since the 1800s. You might as well have been around forever because that is an eternity in this space, baby. You want to check them out. Go to vaultoro.com. Again, it's VAULTORO.com. Vaultoro.com. Let them know that the Golden Stallion sent you and get yourself golden there, baby. Vaultoro.com. All right. Now, let's shift gears up. That media conversation went a lot longer than I expected, but again, it's just another aspect of where we don't think about it. All right? I don't think most people think about it. Where we don't think about the fact that, hey, this app is clearly collecting data about me at any given point, and what does it say about me? And yeah, believe me, they're going to use like what media they, them, those, the powers that be, advertisers, maybe at the least, who knows, at the top of the worst, of what they would use with, how they would profile you with the media that you watch. Okay, so let's start looking again in that direction of local hosting. Okay, all right. Speaking of data and how it will be used against you and it coming from places that you might not expect, this story incredibly fresh. Okay, December 8th, 2019, from The Guardian. Let's talk about it. NHS gives Amazon free use of health data under Alexa advice deal. Woo. UK Health Service will not gain commercial benefit from future Amazon products using its data. Okay, what the hell is all this about? Let's read it quick. Amazon has been given free access to healthcare information collected by the NHS, again, that's out of the UK, as part of a contract with the government. The material, which excludes patient data, could allow, and you might think, oh, well, it doesn't count patient data. What's the big concern? Let's talk about this. Could allow the multinational technology company to make, advertise, and sell its own products. In July, the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, again, this is in the UK, said a partnership with the NHS that allowed Amazon Alexa devices to offer expert health advice to users would reduce pressure on, quote, our hardworking GPs and, of course, that's general practitioners, and pharmacists, end quote. But responses to Freedom of Information requests published by the Sunday Times show the contract will also allow the company access to, that being Amazon, access to information on symptoms, causes, and definitions of conditions, and, quote, all related copyrightable content and data and other materials, end quote. Amazon, which is worth $863 billion and is run by the world's richest person, Jeff Bezos, can then create, quote, new products, applications, cloud-based services, and or distributed software, end quote, which the NHS would not benefit from financially. It can also share the information with third parties. Now, let's be clear, Stallion breaking in for a second. part of the Guardian's take on this is that, so NHS can hand over whatever data to Amazon, okay, and they can say it's not patient data, but I really want to talk about how Alexa can give quote-unquote expert health advice. Because what that looks like is not pretty. Okay. You can say that, or what the Guardian is saying, they're concerned that, well, wait a minute, why do they get access to this data, but then NHS, which I guess they would say has a funding issue, why can't they make any money off of the patents and everything else that Amazon is going to come up with and create based upon the NHS data? Now, I'm not so much necessarily worried about that because, I mean, I care about as much about the NHS as I do about Amazon. I mean, it's a government organization. Screw it. Okay. So it doesn't mean anything to me, but I get that that's their tack, but I think there's something else really to take away from this. So reading on, Labour's Shadow Health Secretary Jonathan Ashworth told the Sunday Times that the government was highly irresponsible and in the pocket of big corporate interests. Woo! Eva Bloom de Monte, a senior researcher at Privacy International, which obtained the contract, said the issue with the partnership was not about data sharing, but about transparency. Several sections have been redacted by the Department of Health and Social Care to protect Amazon's commercial interests. An NHS spokesperson said, quote, no patient data is being provided to this company by the NHS, which takes data privacy extremely seriously and has put appropriate safeguards in place to ensure information is used correctly, end quote. Amazon told the Sunday Times the content it had access to was already on the NHS website. Quote, Amazon does not build customer health profiles based on interactions with NHS.UK content or use such requests for marketing purposes, end quote, it added. Third parties, such as local authorities, can reuse information from the NHS website, but standard agreements only permit this to be used in the UK. The contract with Amazon states that the license applies around the world. So there's certainly a concern to be had there, Stallion breaking in that this data that supposedly was only supposed to be kept within the UK, now that it has a deal with Amazon, is actually available everywhere. Reading on, a spokesperson for the company said, quote, general health-related content from the NHS website is now available to Alexa users via voice technology. The new option is particularly useful for those with accessibility needs who may not have been able to easily access NHS.UK content via a mobile device or computer in the past, end quote. Earlier this week, the company was singled out, well, anyway, it goes on, blah, 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 with financial concerns, okay, which is clearly part of the Guardian's tack on this. I have a greater concern with this. My greater concern with this, now I kind of get it, and I've actually recently experienced this to some degree, where there are people who won't touch a smartphone, never touched a computer, and Satan bless them, and I mean that, like, good for you. But they have an Alexa. And we talked about this years ago when Alexa first came on the market, that, yeah, this is going to be very popular with the senior population, right? This idea of just being able to talk with something and get access to info. Now, my concern, though, isn't so much with the senior population. I get why they're into it, and I understand the accessibility concerns, and having a voice-activated UI of some kind, or UX, is a fine and wonderful thing, and I get why that is helpful for them. No argument from me necessarily on that, but those are very specific use cases. But if you think Amazon is only interested in Alexa becoming an arm of healthcare for seniors, then I have a bridge on Mars to sell you. Wait, are there bridges on Mars? I don't know. Well, okay, we're not going to get into that here. So, but I have a bridge to Mars to sell you if you think that this isn't about something much broader. And here's the concern with that, okay? Part of the concern with that, anyway, is that, in fact, the tech giant that has raised the red flag on the very issue I'm about to bring up is not Amazon, but it happens to be Amazon's, well, what some people consider to be Amazon's competitor, even though really Amazon's only competition is Walmart. Regardless, I'm sure this company likes to think that they're competition for Amazon. That being Google. Okay, they're no competition to Amazon. Again, Amazon really has no competition. They are the company in the world today, and I'm not saying that's a good thing, as I hope you're getting my gist here. Google wanted to warn, and this is about over a year ago, Ironically, also, and we talked about this recently, right, that who's the head of devices at Google, he warned, he said, if you have an Alexa or if you have, any voice-activated device, any of these voice assistants or whatever, of course, he didn't bother to mention that, everybody with a smartphone happens to have that. Okay. But he brought up that, you should probably tell people if you have an Alexa or a Google Home in your home. And I think he's right about that. Okay, but another thing that Google warned about over a year ago was that they wanted people to know, and this is when, or actually this is a couple of years ago, this is when the whole fake news thing really started to balloon. They wanted people to know that Google is a search engine, not, this is important, this term is important, it's not a search engine, or it's a search engine, it's not a truth engine. Google is a search engine, not a truth engine. And that leads to a very interesting problem, okay? And that is that how many people, while we're talking about medical data here, how many people go to Google in search of medical advice? Oh, hell, I've done it. I mean, plenty of people do it. I get it. If it's just a portal to get them to WebMD eventually or something like that, we get it, okay? And in fact, I've heard from people, I mean, you could say this is an anecdote, but I think enough people have talked about it, and you can certainly read about it as well, that frankly, when you go to the doctor, if the doctor today, say a GP, general practitioner or whatever, if they don't know what's going on, or if maybe it's a younger doctor, there's a pretty good bet that they're like, I'm going to go confer with my colleagues. You know what they're doing when they go to confer with their colleagues? They're picking up their smartphone and they're searching Google. They're going to WebMD or whatever to try and find out what the fuck is wrong with you. So you might as well not even have gone to the doctor. You might as well just done the Google search yourself. But the problem there is that, again, Google is just a search engine. It's not a truth engine. You cannot, certainly not at face value. I mean, you could say that, well, okay, I searched around and I compared information and then, finally ended up with something that might remotely be the truth. Okay, but ultimately, or at first blush, you cannot accept the responses or the results, I should say, not the responses, the results that Google gives you as the truth. And you would say, well, Stallion, of course, I know that. Oh, I'm glad you do. But I guarantee you there's a lot of people that don't. Otherwise, why would Google have had to put out that warning? In fact, if this isn't the case, that people just accept what comes up on the first few search results on Google as the truth, why would Google, of all things, try and I mean, that's a little bit of a PR flub. I mean, I get why they had to do it. It was a way for them. I mean, they had to basically legally respond to, and even culturally respond to the concerns around fake news, and that's why they came out with it. That's why they didn't mention it before, because it's not like that the idea that Google wasn't a truth engine wasn't the truth before. Right? It's just now they had to really own up to it. And they had to own up to it because they know that it's happening. That people are taking Google search results as, basically the word of God. Relax, I'm an atheist, but you get my point. So now my concern is that Alexa's responses, okay, now Alexa's not going to put you directly in touch, say, with a doctor. The ultimate plan with Alexa, having access or having this deal with NHS and so on, is basically to give you some degree of a consensus, which is very little different from a Google search, which again, by Google's own admission, is not the truth. It is giving you some kind of consensus of what could possibly going on for you or what solutions there could be. But who has control of that medical data, of that medical information? You? No. Okay. Is it even really like doctors? There are some great doctors out there. No. Ultimately, it's some organization that it now has to some degree. You could say the Guardian's saying that NHS isn't making money off of this deal. It's saving, at the very least, it's saving the money. They admit to that, right? And it's taking the burden off of their general practitioners and other medical professionals. Okay, but there is incentive to appease Amazon in this deal. Now, I know telemedicine and all of this kind of stuff, that is a new hotness. It's not even that new. It's been going on for around a decade. And the idea that somehow you could plug in, like some kind of surgery device into a USB port on your computer, and then you could be operated on from the comfort of your own home, that is certainly something that people have talked about, that even people who are really into, shall we say, privacy, security, maybe even, freedom, liberty, all this stuff, they're very much into this becoming a thing in the future. I want to warn you against this, because the very nature of the infrastructure that is powering Alexa is incredibly centralized. And much like something as simple as your MP3 collection, okay, through Plex, you think, well, but that's not under the purview of anybody. When I'm using Plex, it's self-hosting, it's my own collection. Oh, maybe when you got started with Plex, that wasn't the case. But now, oh yeah. It's not just Plex now. No, now Warner Brothers is in there. And that's ultimately the concern that I have here, is that you could say initially that this isn't going to be a big deal, but you condition people long enough, just like, it's creepy as fuck, the idea that there are Amazon devices specifically, that are Alexa powered, specifically marketed towards kids. You get people used to this, and you better believe Amazon wants you to consider that what comes out of Alexa's mouth is the truth. They want Alexa to be some kind of truth engine. They want you asking questions and it giving you the word of God, but in this case, God would be Bezos and whatever fucking designs he happens to have. I raise all these concerns. Okay, Alexa is not your doctor. Google is not your doctor. Okay, you want to experiment with yourself and what you find out, on Google and whatever else, okay, fine. But this is Alexa being directly connected with major health organizations. It should be a terrifying prospect. And I know, because over the years, we've covered issues around big pharma and all. We can get into, and I want to, and maybe in the near future I will. I'd love to get into a major conversation around health. Okay. And I'm a guy, again, like I said at the top of the show, I'm going to the gym an hour to 2 hours, basically 7 nights a week. Okay. I take my health incredibly seriously. I'm very concerned on every level. So I'd love to have the conversation around this, because my concern is that ultimately you are going to get caught up into some market, okay, some bullshit health market that Amazon say wants to schlep on you, or whoever else, when, you know what, frankly, if you just took your health seriously, took command of your health, and did simple things like eating right, exercised, and actually listened to your own goddamn body yourself, okay, that you could come up with, that you could take care of these things, and you wouldn't get caught into this racket that is, say, big pharma, that is, say, what Amazon has in mind. Just these tech companies, again, they're all in this for the money. They really are. And they basically just want to hand you a pill, or maybe a device, or whatever Amazon has in mind with this deal. Okay, they just want to hand you something to shut you up and make you think that you're better, instead of you actually making lifestyle choices and changes that could solve it, that doesn't cost you a dime, or that doesn't get you hooked in whatever Amazon happens to have in mind. And you better, and let's be clear here, we've covered this over the years. Amazon is very interested. They're interested in health insurance. They've even gotten into the supplements game, okay, which is basically a Trojan horse into eventually, and what did they buy? Was it PillPack? Or not PillPack. They bought a company that had figured out a great way to ship prescriptions. I forget the name of it. Bottom line, they are looking very much to get into the health industry. Hardcore. Okay? And that should be seen as a problem. In fact, look, I don't even really, I'll just call it, I don't even really trust doctors that much. And we've talked about that many times on this show. Okay, that's not to say doctors are a bad thing, by no means. Okay, I have listeners that are doctors. I get the score, and you know what I'm talking about. All right. In fact, I was reading a book recently. Ellen actually recommended this to me. It's called How Not to Die. I'm still reading it. Tremendous book. I recommend it to everybody, even just already in I think I'm about maybe halfway through, and it's already, it's terrifying and at the same time brilliant, right? But they're talking about how, I think it was in California, that the amount of training that doctors have to go through, medical doctors have to go through, just around nutrition, which ironically, if you ask those same doctors, even if they don't have a ton of information on it, would readily tell you, even the government will tell you how important nutrition is, proper nutrition, right? Even if they kind of get it wrong, the idea that you are what you eat, right? People, that's a phrase for a reason, because it's very much true. But your average medical doctor has a matter of hours, just hours, single digits, in fact, I think, or maybe it got down to 12 hours or something like that of training in nutrition. That's all. When just about anybody, even people that don't know much about nutrition, will tell you that, if you eat right and etc., it can heal so many ails, and it can be so preventative for, things that are going wrong with you, or that could go wrong. And yet medical doctors have almost no experience in this. In fact, I've brought this up many times because it's always the funniest thing. When I see a dietitian who's telling somebody, like a family member of mine, what to eat, and well, you look at them, and I'm not insulting, I don't mean to insult them. I'm just saying, you look at them and you go, wait a minute, who the hell are you to tell me what to eat? I'm pretty sure I can smell the McDonald's fry grease coming off of you right now, or whatever else. I say all this, again, we were talking earlier, this kind of fits a theme. We were talking earlier about, local hosting your media to make sure you have control of your media and control of your privacy. It's an extreme position, yes. Okay. But I want you to consider it. I want you to know that this is going on. That's why I'm saying it. Okay. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm telling you what's going on. At the same time, why don't you try local hosting, okay, your health? Because if it goes elsewhere, it ultimately ends in the hands of Amazon. And if you've been listening to the show for at least a year or two, we have this whole hashtag that I created that, it's hashtag Amazon World Domination Tour. That's a thing. Okay. This is a company that is, if you're concerned about what's going on with Amazon, military deals, everything else, whatever, well, let's start paying attention to your health, because that information is now going to them as well. How about we end the show with this? Local host everything. I like that. Anyway, before I wrap this one up, okay, and if you want to talk about this kind of stuff, get this conversation going in a grander scale. Another show, when you're done listening to this, another show I want you to go check out, you go to freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live is the number 27 talk show in the United States. Your voice is going to get heard, and it's going to get heard by probably millions of people. And those are the people that need to hear about this, that this stuff is going on. Hell, call in and tell them, yeah, I heard about this on Sovryn Tech. That's some great cross-pollination there. Check it out, freetalklive.com. It goes 7 nights a week, 3 hours a night. You want to jump on that show? And you can even call in. It's an open phones call-in show, and you can get your voice heard there. I hope you felt heard. Thank you for the emails into the show and covering what was going on with Plex. I think that's a very important thing to bring up. And fuck it. Let's local host everything. Absolutely. Anyway, that's it for this episode of Sovryn Tech. We got a lot more Sovryn Tech to come out throughout the month of December. In 2020, is it going to be a year? We'll wrap this one up. I will see all of you on the other side.
You just experienced Sovryn Tech. Go to sovryntech.com, that's SOVRYN tech.com, and connect with us there. Find links from today's show and catch our podcast feed. Sovryn Tech is copy heart. copying art is an act of love, and love is not subject to law. So please share the show however you like. Welcome to the evolution.